Welcome to Spellbook, a game of strategy and magic where players take on the role of wizards, gathering to participate in the annual Grand Rite. Place the altar tile and the bag in the center of the table, then put the materia in the pouch. Draw 5 materia and place them on the altar's empty spaces. Each player draws 2 materia at random from the pouch to create their starting pool. Each player takes a familiar board, which they place in front of them. Each player takes a player aid card, as well as the set of spell cards with the matching familiar icon on the back. For the first game, use the starting set, identified by a star on the cards. Arrange the spell cards and player aid card in front of each player in the following order: morning, noon, evening, and then the yellow card and the player aid card. Each player must have the same spells in their set of cards. Randomly determine who will be the first player and give them the first player token. One by one, players will go through their 3 phases of the game: morning, noon, and evening. Each game phase offers 1 basic action and 1 spell card action. During each phase, the player may perform a single action. Let's take a look at the basic actions. Let's start with the morning phase. During the morning phase, you can either 1. Take 1 materia from the altar and add it to your pool, or 2. Draw 2 materia at random from the pouch and add them to your pool. Each player's pool is strictly limited to a maximum of 9 materia. This limit cannot be exceeded at any time during the game. Next, we move on to the noon phase. During the noon phase, you can store 1 materia from your pool on the first available slot of your familiar board. This action is not mandatory. Finally, we conclude with the evening phase. During the evening phase, you can learn a new spell by spending materia of the required color. For example, to learn a red spell, you will need to spend 3 materia in order to learn it at the basic level, 4 materia at the medium level, or 5 materia at the highest level. Place one of the spent materia on the corresponding spell level, then discard the others into the discard box. The spell can be used at the learned level or lower. Some spells do not have an action symbol. They have a permanent or instant effect, or they earn points at the end of the game. A spell with an instant effect is distinguished by this symbol. The effect is applied when the player learns the spell. Afterward, they cannot benefit from it anymore. A spell with a permanent effect is distinguished by this symbol. The effect applies for the rest of the game, whenever the conditions listed are met during their day. Spells learned throughout the game can be cast during the different activation steps: morning, noon, evening, instead of basic actions to benefit from increasingly powerful effects. You can only take 1 action per phase. After the evening phase, it's time to update the altar based on the number of materia present. If there are fewer than 5 materia on the altar, the player draws from the pouch until 5 altar spaces are occupied. If there are between 5 and 9 materia on the altar, the player draws 1 materia from the pouch and places it on an available altar space. If there are at least 10 materia on the altar, the player discards all materia on it and adds 5 more by drawing from the pouch. The game ends as soon as a player meets at least one of the following conditions. 1. They learn their 7th and final spell. 2. They fill the last available space on their familiar board. The end of the game is triggered when a player learns their 7th spell or when they finish feeding their familiar. The player with the most points wins the game. In case of a tie, the player who learned the most spells wins. It's recommended to become familiar with the game by playing a few rounds with the 3 starting sets. Once you're familiar with the game, spells are randomly drawn by the first player. For each of the 7 colors, they shuffle the 3 face-down cards and draw 1 at random. This determines the card of each color that will be used by all players for this game. Now it's time for you to prepare for the annual Grand Rite with over 2,000 different combinations at your disposal, making each game of Spellbook a unique experience. Visit www.spellcowboys.fr for more information.